interacting with chatbots. Okay, so hola Menris, Spanish, awesome. Welcome, Layla. And we have Japanese, nice, and some experience. Give you another second or two. So just let us know your name, your languages you teach, Laura, Spanish, and more or less a two. ¿Cómo está? Rochelle, Ilocano at Waipahu, awesome. Okay, at one. Will, okay, and we'll have some experience. Nice. So we have a variety of languages here, a variety of experiences, and you can keep going in the chat. But just for now, I'm going to move on with the rest of the presentation. So in terms of what we're going to be doing today, I'm going to start off with a little intro, background about generative AI, about bots, and looking at how we can use bots for language learning. Then we'll look at some tools we can use to actually build chatbots. And lastly, we'll have some hands-on time and a little bit of time for Q&A and wrap up. I did want to emphasize also, I don't want to be disingenuous. I know I have little robots all over my slides. Those are just because robots are cute and I enjoy them. But these bots that we're going to be building today are more software bots. So they're not going to look like the cute little robots we see on our slides, but actually they're going to look a lot more like a kind of computer interface. Anyway, I just wanted to clarify that in case anyone was hoping to build like a little robot. So our goals for this session are to be able to walk out and recognize different types of chatbots, to be able to identify some tools that we can use to build and design chatbots, and also to discuss and plan for ways we can use chatbots in our classes. So right now, I always like to get to know you a little bit more and sort of get into your thoughts. I like to make things interactive. So if you could go to either this URL, ahaslides.com slash haltbot, all capitals, or you could take your phone and just scan the QR code and join the same thing. So I'll give you a second to do that. Okay. And we're going to hop over to this AHA slide. Oh, and there you go, in case you didn't get the QR code at first, or you can see the URL there. So when you hear the word chatbot, what words come to mind? And you can go ahead and just share type of limited, smart, knowledge, robot. ChatGPT, AI, machine. Okay, so we've definitely got a variety of different ideas that go on. Assistance, limitations, fun conversations. Yeah, so we have lots of different ideas, positive and negative, that we associate with these bots. So that we think of when we hear this word chatbot. And I'm sure our students do as well. Now we're going to go to my second question to all of you, which is how often do you use chatbots? And by chatbots, I mean things like ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Claude, any of those or other ones that you might use. So maybe you never use them. Maybe it's like once a month. Maybe it's a few times a week. Maybe you're hardcore and you use them every day. Okay, it looks like here, just like in life, we have variety. We have some people who are never using them. We have a few people that are occasional users, right? We have some people that are relatively frequent users and also frequent users. Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the presentation. Really briefly, we're going to talk about some important moments in the history of generative AI. And this is really just scratching the surface. It's not by any means in depth. So in the 1940s, we see mathematician Claude Shannon developed information theory. And this basically shows how algorithms or equations can use probability to predict language, right? So we see this relationship between uh, math and language going on. In 1950, there was a cryptologist and computer scientist, Alan Turing, and he created a test to see if a machine can act like a robot and fool a human, right? So this was called the Turing test. And for many, many years, this was like a very high bar for AI to achieve, right? It was thought maybe it will never happen. In the 1960s, which is often referred to as the winter of AI, we're really focusing on more rule-based systems. So they're looking at very rigid types of AI that is really designed for specific tasks. Then we make a really big leap. There's a lot that happens in between. But anyway, we're going to go to 2017. And in 2017, Ashish Vaswani and his colleagues at Google introduced what they called the neural network or the transformer model, which allowed machines to better understand and produce language. And this was really the big breakthrough that powers all of the generative AI that we see today. So when we're talking about the rule-based bots, right, what we see kind of surge in the 1960s, this is probably what a lot of us who are my age or older think of when we think of chatbots, right? They operate in a very stiff, predefined set of rules. They're limited abilities. The pros of them is they're easy to design and they're very predictable. The cons is they are not flexible and they can be hard to maintain if there's a lot of rules or those rules need to be updated. So when we think of these bots, we're thinking of when we call our bank and get, press one for Spanish, English, press two for Spanish, like those customer service type of bots. When we go to a website and, need to get some type of information retrieval, things like appointment scheduling. So they are useful for very specific tasks, but they are also very limited. There are rule-based bots. Now, looking at large language models, this is going to be a very simple, oh, this last time. This is going to be a very simplified overview. So, what large language models are doing in a nutshell is they are being fed huge amounts of data, basically like the whole internet, documents, text, websites, videos, all of it, right? That's going into their pre-training. Then we are building this foundational model. And after that, we're adapting it to different contexts to be able to do different things like generate content, generate code, answer questions. So that's very scratching the surface of how they work. And one thing they do with language is they're actually assigning sort of numbers to it, and then they're putting language in these vectors or in these groups. And we can see here an example of how words are grouped together, how they are stored in this vector. And we can see how cat is closer to feline than it is to, for instance, dog or something like that. So these vectors look at the relationships not only of certain words, but the relationship between words. And so within this process, it may look at something like this. A puppy is to a dog as a cat, as a kitten is to, and right, we see like cat, bird, bear, human, and it's saying what is most probable, what is most likely, and we see here cat. So when we type in some similar query to a generative AI chatbot, a puppy is to a dog, as a kitten is to, and it will fill in. So this is kind of what is underlying these chatbots. And these chatbots use machine learning and natural language processing, and they have a really broad range of functionality, much broader than our rule-based bots. They can generate answers on their own. They can analyze the questions that a user puts in. Um, and we also should note that pretty much all of the chatbots that we interact with are not purely they don't exist without rules. They have many rules underlying them as well, but there's also this flexibility built into them that we don't see with the rule-based chatbots. The pros is they can do almost anything. They can do a whole bunch of complex tasks. They are customizable. They are able to work in multiple languages. Some cons, as we have probably heard, they can produce inaccuracies or hallucinations, and in some case biases. They can be extremely costly to develop and maintain. And in terms of use, just a huge variety of tasks from text generation, translation, object identification, data analysis, and even more. Turning to chatbots and language learning, some previous studies on the effectiveness of using chatbots for language learning is shown here. So Wang and his colleagues did this study, which is called a meta-analysis, which looks at many, many previous studies and puts all that data together to figure out overall what is the effect. And they found overall a medium positive effect size. So about students that used the chatbot had about half a standard of deviation improvement in their performance as opposed to ones that did not. And they were most effective for adult and adolescent learners. Young, in their study, noted that there was a substantial use of high frequency words in chatbot interactions. So the students that used this chatbot, about 76% of the words in their interactions were the first 1,000 most frequent words in English. So it was very good in terms of building their use of high frequency vocabulary. This study by Yuan showed that chatbot interactions increased elementary school learners' oral proficiency and also their willingness to communicate. So we see it benefiting their performance and also effectively, right? So these are just some studies that have shown benefits. And thinking about vocabulary, right? In terms of language acquisition, there are high correlations between the number of words you know and your overall language proficiency. So the more we can build learners' vocabulary, the more beneficial it can be for their acquisition of a language. So now we're going to take a minute and look at some different tools, or several minutes, and look at some different tools for building chatbots. The first one we're going to look at is called Magic School, and I'm going to walk you through it. I will pop the URL in the chat in a second. So Magic School is an AI tool for educators. It can be used for creating chatbots, lesson planning, making rubrics, creating questions for videos, and much, much more. It is powered by several different generative AI models. So it is sort of built on top of not only ChatGPT, but also Gemini and Claude. The great thing is, at least for now, it is free for teachers. However, you can have subscriptions for increased usage. So if you're going to use it a lot, you may want to consider a subscription, but right now it is free. So I will go over this also in a live demo. When you log in to Magic School, you're going to log in. And then once you're in there, the next thing you're going to do is select Launch to Students. So this Launch to Students button, and that's going to help you create basically like a room or a space for your students. Then you're going to select Launch New Room. So that will create a room. And you can add the room details, like with the name of your class, like class 101, section 2, or, Japanese 300, or whatever your class name is. And then you're going to see a list of many different tools. The one we're going to focus on today is custom chatbot. So you're going to choose this one, which says build a custom chatbot from scratch. Once you do that, It's going to take you, you can go into the chatbot itself. And when you create the chatbot, you're going to add a name for your bot. You're going to give it a brief description. So this will help your students understand what your bot does. And then you're going to add your instructions. So your instructions are essentially almost like a prompt of what you want your bot to be able to do. You want to be specific and test it as you go. Another cool thing about Magic School is you can add what we call knowledge files. So those are PDFs or images or YouTube videos or website links or, lots of different possibilities. And that's what your bot knows or refers to. When you have created your bot and you want to share it with your class, you're going to click on the share Magic School Room and the join info in the upper right corner, and then click on the join URL. You can also have the option of sending it to Google Classroom if you use it Google Classroom, or with a QR code, you could have a join code. I like the join URL best. I think it's the easiest. You could just share it with your class by email or on the learning management system you use or your class website or whatever you use to manage your class. A cool feature is that you can actually see your students' interactions with the bot. So I can see here this list of these students interacted with this bot. So all of those ones use the bot to practice their Portuguese. And when I click on a specific student, I can see their interaction with the bot near their name. So entrevista bot, I can see there that this student interacted with the bot. The bot asked them, what is your favorite color? The student responded yellow, right? The bot responds to it. And you can actually see the whole conversation that your student or students have with the bot when you click on each individual interaction. So I think that's a really neat feature of Magic School. And now we'll actually go in there and take a look. I'm just going to go back to my very beginning. So when you log into Magic School, it may look a little overwhelming. There's lots of different AI tools. But remember, what we're going to do when we log into Magic School is we go to launch to student. Oh, wait, while I'm talking, I'm just going to put the Magic School link in the URL in case anybody likes to kind of follow along as I talk. Where's my chat? Here we are. So here's our Magic School link. You can create an account or log in if you already have one. Once you have created your account and logged into Magic School, you'll see all these different AI tools. The button I'm going to go to is this one over to the left called Launch to Students. Okay, and then, sorry, I got to move my thing. I'm going to launch a new room. So I'm going to create a new room for my class. And I'll just call it Español 101, right? Maybe I'm teaching Spanish 101, so I call it Spanish 101. And here you can choose the grade level, so it gives you a variety. Like I said, I usually work with college learners, so I'll just choose university. You can set the number of students. It can be all the way up to 250, but my classes are not usually that large, so maybe I'll just set it to 25, and then I'll go next. Now I have to choose which tools I want to put in this room. For the purpose of today's presentation, we're going to choose custom chatbot. You can add additional tools, but today I just want to focus on this one. So I'm going to add it, and it has been added. So I can see by that green check mark next to the tool that it's been added to my room. I'm going to go up to next. And here I can customize my chatbot. So now I'm going to click on the little icon and customize it. I can give it a name. So what should we name our chatbot? You can throw it in the chat or you can tell me out loud. We can name it anything. Oh, I'll just take what I see there. Why not? We'll name it Blade Runner. I don't know. But you could name it anything you want. Whoops. Oh, okay. And then I'm going to give it a description. I'm going to make one in Spanish. It's like saying it helps you practice your vocabulary. And I always like to do little like guessing games with my students. So my instructions that I've written here are basically you're a friendly Spanish tutor. You'll play a vocabulary guessing game with your students. They're beginners, and I use the European Common Framework here just because it seems to understand that reference. Um, and then I say randomly select a word from the list, from the knowledge files, and describe it to students. Use simple short sentences. After you have had the student guess five different words, ask them if they want to continue or stop, and then print out a list of the vocabulary with the English translations. And I have a vocabulary list that I'm going to upload. So this is just a basic list of food vocabulary in Spanish. So I have done that. I've given my bot a name. I've given it a description. I've checked the level and I've given it some instructions of what I wanted to do. And I added a knowledge file. Now I can test it out. And I definitely recommend testing out your bots before you give them or deploy them to your students. So I can choose generate. And it's basically telling me it's a friendly bot and we're going to play a guessing game. And then it says, what is a green fruit that you use to make guacamole? Anybody have an idea? You can throw it in the chat or say it out loud. So a green fruit that we use. Yes, although I think that one is not on the list. I think it might have the Mexican word, which is aguacate. But yeah, palta or aguacate, right? And we can give that to the bot, and then it tells me, oh, yeah, excellent, very good. And then it gives me another question about very basic food. It's white, and you eat it with a lot of foods. You use it to make sandwiches. What is it? Then you might guess, yeah, bread. And so you could see it's a great way for your students to kind of interactively work with the vocabulary. It might be a little bit more fun than like just doing a worksheet or something you might typically have them do for homework. So I can see that my bot is working and I can click done. Now, if I want my students to be able to join this room, I will go up to the right-hand corner and click on launch room. And I have a variety of choices. I could share the link with my students. Like I told you, that's my favorite way to do it. I could also, if I were using Google Classroom, have it uh, the room information deployed to my Google Classroom, or I could have a QR code and then a join code. So any of those three options you can use to share the class with your students. And like I mentioned, I'll just go back to my student rooms. This is a different one. Oh wait, let me find one where there's activities. So when I look at a room, as I mentioned, I can see which students had used it, and I can also jump in and actually see their chat. I don't know why it's not showing. There we go. So I can see the student EV's chat that they had with the bot earlier. So that's a really cool feature of Magic School that I like. Okay, going back to my presentation. So some different ideas for using Magic School. You could use Magic School to make vocabulary games. Like I said, I always like to do vocabulary guessing games with my students in class. So this could be a way to extend it beyond the class, and that can be fun for them. I know we have a lot of big TPRS fans in HALT. So using or creating a bot to engage your students in storytelling, followed by some comprehension or discussion questions could be fun. You could also create a bot based on content. So this could be a way you bring in the culture or cultures of the language that you teach by using a YouTube video or a cultural text or something, and having the bot create questions to ask about the content of the video or the content of the text or the characters or so on. I always like to push it even further and have my students get creative. So you could have your students brainstorm ideas for chatbots and create them, and you could, put them in Magic School and test them in your class. So you could have your students actually help you design different bots that they could use. And I will just quickly look at the chat. Okay, good. We don't have any questions yet. So I'm going to go on just because I know we don't have a whole lot of time. So in looking at ChatGPT, so that first tool we looked at was called Magic School. This one is called ChatGPT, which probably some of you have heard of, maybe not. But ChatGPT is what we consider a foundational model from OpenAI. It can understand and generate text and perform many, many different tasks. How much does it cost? It does have a limited free version, so you can interact with ChatGPT on your own for free or have your students interact with it for free. However, the feature you need to create customized chatbots costs $20 per month. So you do have to have a subscription to create chatbots for ChatGPT. You do not have to have a subscription to create chatbots for Magic School. I see a question from Will in the chat that do students need to make an account for Magic School? They do not. You can actually have them just join from the link. And I will mention this later. I often have students use a made up name that they tell me what the made up name is, or just their initials or some kind of nickname, because I don't like my students to just put a lot of personal information into it. But no, your students do not need a Magic School account in order to interact with your bot. That's a great question. Okay. So once you log into ChatGPT, let me just close out my chat window here. You would create your account and log in. On the left side, you're going to go to this little icon with the four circles that says Explore GPTs. And then you're going to move over to the upper right corner and go My GPTs and click on Create. So that little plus with Create. And then you'll select Configure. Whoops, went backwards. So once you've done that, you're going to see a field which will look similar in terms of the content to what we see on the Magic School chatbots. So you will have to have a name, a description, so any name for your bot, a description of what your bot does, which will help your students or people using your bot understand what the purpose of the bot is. Then you will put your instructions, what you want your bot to do. And remember, the more specific you can be, the better. Conversation starters. So this is something a little bit different that we see in ChatGPT, which we don't see in Magic School. So these are short words or phrases that your students will use to initiate the conversation with the chatbot. So I tend to use greetings, like in Portuguese, I'll put oi, olá, bom dia, things like that. But you can, put whatever. So I don't know. And then knowledge. So knowledge, just like we saw in Magic School, are those knowledge files that you want your bot to know or to refer to. They could be PDFs, images, links. One thing about ChatGPT is it cannot create questions or content from a YouTube link. Magic School can, but that is a limitation. ChatGPT cannot. So if you wanted to use a YouTube video, I would suggest using Magic School or just downloading the transcript of that video and uploading it into ChatGPT's knowledge files. When you're in ChatGPT, you're going to see this box of capabilities. So that's going to be what you can check to allow or restrict what your bot's ability to search the web or generate images. I think those are generally the ones we'll use as language teachers. And you can decide whether you want the bot to be able to do those things or not do those things. When you get to sharing your bot, you're going to choose share and click on share GPT, and you can choose the visibility. Only me would be only you can see and interact with that bot. Probably the one a lot of us would choose is anyone with link. So that way we could share our bot easily with our students. And then another option is to put it in the GPT store. It's kind of like the App Store for iOS or the Google Play Store, in that anybody can kind of interact with that bot who goes into that store. There's paid things in that store, but many free bots too. Um, so you could do that if you wanted to. Okay, so another consideration is that ChatGPT, unlike Magic School, does not currently have any way you can create a class. So if you create a bot, you will be able to share your bot link with your students. They'll be able to interact with it, but you will not have any way to see their interactions, right? You won't have any registration of the interactions that a student has done with that bot unless they share their link to their chat interactions with you. So it's not quite as all in one place as Magic School is. So we will take a quick look at it. Let me go find it. I do believe for ChatGPT that your students will need to create an account in order to interact with it. So here I am. I'm going to go to explore GPTs, right? These four little squares over here or circles over here. And I'm going to go to create. And we can see this interface is very similar to what we saw in Magic School. I'm actually going to go back and just edit a bot that I already have created. So I'm going to go to this one, Bota, which is like, let's go. And it's a travel bot I created for Portuguese. So I gave it the title, Bota. I gave it a description, a travel bot for students in Brazil. And then I gave it some instructions, telling it it's a friendly, helpful guide. It's going to speak to them in Portuguese and use short sentences. I gave it the level of my learners as intermediate level, approximately B1 in the European Common Reference Framework. And then I'm telling it to recommend 3 places for them to go, to make recommendations of places to visit. And I uploaded knowledge files. So the knowledge file I uploaded was a PDF from the Ministry of Tourism of Brazil, which gives information about different places to visit. And I told the bot to ask them questions to check if they understood the recommendations, and then to print out a vocabulary list for them. So this is everything that I put in the bot. And you can see here, I can test it out. So I can update it, imagining that I made some sort of change. And you can always change things in your bot. So if you test it out and it's not working the way you expected, you can always go back in and edit it. So I'll start my conversation with the bot. I say hi to it, and I can tell it, oh, sorry. I want to know about places to visit in Brazil. So it's giving me 3 different places. And the plus about this is since I added the knowledge files to it, that information from the Ministry of Tourism in Brazil, I can be more confident in this information that it is just referring to the places that are in those knowledge files. It is not making up places in Brazil. It is not making up facts about them, right? It is referring to this actual information that I had uploaded into it. And then it's asking me questions about it, and it's printing out the vocabulary list at the end. When I want to share this bot with my students, like I said, I would go to share, right? Oh no, sorry. This is the link because here I'm interacting with it. Forgot about it. So if this is good to see though, if I wanted my students to share their interactions with me, they could share up at the upper right-hand corner, create the link, copy it, and then share it with me. And then I, as a teacher, could see the interaction my student had with this bot. So that can be helpful. uh, for you. If I go back into editing it and I want to share it now as the teacher, I could do anyone with link. I could put it in the GPT store. So whatever you want to do, you would just copy the link and share it with your students, however you typically share it with them. I'm just going to check the chat really quickly. Um, could you use Chat Gemini to create a chat bot and then copy the code into yes. So if you have basically a recipe or a description of a chat bot that you've created in ChatGPT or in Gemini, you could copy that and put those instructions to Magic School, and it should work. So just some ideas for building bots with ChatGPT. You can create a character bot, like a bot based on a character from a story or a novel that your students could interact with. You could make a game-based bot that gives your students questions or tasks. We'll look at an example later. I bet quests, not questions. You could also do one where you have your students design and create their own, right? Be creative, come up with something, and they could actually create them and test them in class. So now we're going to have a little hands-on bot time. So you can choose from one of the tools that we saw in the demo, either Magic School or ChatGPT. Remember, ChatGPT, you do have to have the paid account in order to be able to do this. I believe in Google Gemini, if you have a paid account or your school does, then you can also do this. They are called gems, and you can test it out. And if you want to share the link with us, we can test it out for you. So here you see Magic School bot recipes and GPT follower bot recipe. I will show you what those are really quickly. So, oops, wrong one. These are our Magic School bot recipes. So these are just little recipes that I gave you to make a bot in whatever language. So wherever it says language, you can fill in your language, Japanese, Spanish, uh, Ilocano, whatever you're teaching. And then where it says upload a knowledge file, right? That could be a vocabulary list. It could be something else. So you can always um, play around with whatever knowledge file. So you would basically just take this, fill in the language that you want, and then copy and paste it into Magic School for the instructions of what you want your bot to be able to do. And I gave a few different possibilities, one that does interviews, one that tells short, funny stories, one that references a cultural video. So those are the Magic School recipes. We see also here from my wonderful colleague, Dr. Richard Medina, and his intern, Michelle Chang, and they designed a more complex bot in ChatGPT, which plays a game with your students where they have to sort of find the queen in a castle, and it provides a map of the castle for your students. So you can see here, this would be the map. And instead of room names, we see numbers. So the bot is basically giving them directions that your students would have to follow, like, go down the hall, turn left, and it will play this game where the queen will be in one of the rooms. And when your student reaches that room by following the directions, they will put in the code or those four numbers that you see. So this is something that they uploaded to the knowledge files. I believe they originally built this direction followers bot for Chinese and Russian, but you can take the recipe and add your own language and try testing it out in ChatGPT if you'd like to, too. Um, yes. So let me go back here to the bot recipes. So you can take a moment and try out making a bot if you want to, or you can just ask questions if you have any. Let me just check my time over here. That was 2 minutes. Okay, so I see Mrs. Garcia, which link did you want?
The ones you were saying for the prompts you have.
Oh yeah, they're the ones right here that you see
Oh,
on screen. So you can go to go.hawaii.edu/lowercase bfc or go.hawaii.edu/lowercase dfb, or you can also scan either of those QR codes.
I know I had to run to grab my phone. That's why I was like, where is it?
Oh,
Thank you.
no worries. No worries. Okay, and just to make sure I keep us on time, because I know we are running out of time, I did want to mention some considerations. So I really would recommend supervision and that you always preview a chatbot before you use it or deploy it to your students. I would also suggest monitoring their use, particularly if you were working with minors, with students who are under 18. You really should be careful. Not to worry you too much, but it is something, you want to think about. Another thing to think about is their privacy. I personally never have my students share personal information with a chatbot. I have them use nicknames or sometimes, their initials or something for their interactions. I just feel it's definitely safer that way. Um, Another consideration is ethical use. Really, I think giving your students clear guidelines of how they can use chatbots and when. Maybe you tell them, oh, it's fine to use the chatbots to create these stories and to practice your vocabulary. But when you do this assignment, you really need to do it on your own and you cannot use chatbots or generative AI. So just be clear with your students in terms of the expectations. Also, point out to them the limitations and biases, right? So these are not created and living within a vacuum. They live in our world, which is full of biases. So unfortunately, some of that is reflected in the bots themselves. Also, there are certain limitations of things they're good at and not good at. They may work better with certain languages too. So just be aware of that. You also want to really align your bot with your objectives. So use your learning objectives to guide your bot design and always, always keep communication in focus. Just some final thoughts. You can use chatbots to foster engagement and interaction in a language that they're learning for your students. Customization is key. You want to tailor your bots to align them with your learning objectives and your students' interests and their needs. You also can really empower students to be creators, to have them analyze their own experiences, and to design and test their own bots. And I really mean this, but I want you to remember that there is no technology that can replace you. You should cultivate your relationship with your students, emphasize proficiency over perfection, and use AI as a tool to help you create deeper, more meaningful learning experiences. So mahalo nui. If you have any questions, I know it's a lot of information. You can feel free to reach out to me by email. My email is rmamiya@hawaii.edu. And you can also access these slides by going to go.hawaii.edu/lowercase w, lowercase f, lowercase b. And these are my references. And that's it. So mahalo nui. Thank you for coming. And hopefully we're just like 1 minute over, 2 minutes over. Okay. I'm getting a little bit better. So enjoy the rest of your fall symposium and thank you for coming.